So in part one, in the creation story of Genesis, I established the fact that the heavens were divided between the sun and the moon, which were made to be used as the calculations of time, thus the months, the year, and the days. So I showed how the Hebrew Sabbath is practiced when the sun sets, which is when their day begins, and the moon rises. So one day consists both of the sun and the moon, and the Sabbath is the rest in between the division of the two. So this is why I established the fact that the Monday and Sunday are the two pillars that divide the week. So the Bible says the moon marks off the season of time, and thus the sun knows when to go down. So when the moon rises, or the new crescent of the new moon is established, it also establishes the beginning of time, the first day. So the book of Genesis is when God creates, which brings me to the very word of creation, which means the beginning, the Bereshit. As I have explained many times before, the very word create comes from the word crescent, the crescent of the moon. And I have also explained how Crete, the ancient city of Greece, was where they worshipped the Cretan bull. And of course, I have shown how all of the ancient cultures around the world had the bull god as their creator gods, which actually brings us to our current word we use today for the God that created us, which is our creator, which actually comes from the crescent moon, the lunar bullhorns of the bull god, which is actually the bull gods or the Elohim. So this is why our creator is the create or the crescent of the lunar bull. And of course, this is actually where we get the word Christ as well, from the crescent, the creation of the moon. So I have already established the fact that the bull god El Toro of the Bible is the creator god. And of course, the pictograph for the name of God is the pictograph of the bull's head and the El, the Lamed. So the A and the L is the bull god of the Bible. And that's our creator God. Now remember that our alphabet comes from the Hebrew alphabet. And of course, the very first letter in the beginning is the letter A, or the Aleph, which of course, when you go back to Paleo-Hebrew, is the pictograph of a bull, thus the creator. And of course, today, our letter A is an inversion of a bull. Thus, when you flip it over, you'll clearly see the Aleph creator of the bull god of the Bible, the letter A. So once again, we establish the crescent of the lunar moon with that of creation, of being the first and the beginning. So the marking of the seasons is the marking of the time. And of course, this is why the Bible talks about the Alpha and the Omega, which is actually really the Aleph and the Tav, the A and the T, the first and last letter of the Hebrew alphabet. So that's why the Bible says that the end of the harvest is the end of time. But actually, it's just the end of an age. It's the end of a cycle. Okay, so I'm going to clarify some things real quickly here. First of all, you must remember that the Bible was created by scribes that scribbled by the human hand. The Bible was not created by Jesus or God or by angels. Okay, it was created by mankind. But let's stick to the Bible itself and the words that are written. So real quickly, everyone is confused that studies the Bible, and they don't understand what's going on because they don't understand the parables of it. Anyway, with that being said, everyone's confused about the Sabbath day, that God created in 7 days, but the moon was created on the 4th day. How could it be a new moon in the 7th day and all that? They're all confused entirely. Now listen, like I explained, the first Sabbath was the mid-rest between the day and the night, when time is even and stands still. What's amazing is that people miss just little details that are really huge details. So, in the beginning, when God created, He created and separated the day from the night. Thus he created the heavens and the earth first. And he created light and darkness. He separated the light from the darkness. And of course, this is one of the huge mistakes of the Bible, because the very first day of creation, God separated the light and the dark, and the water was upon the earth. So Genesis 1:1 states that God created the heavens and the earth was covered with water, and he separated the light from the darkness. But the Bible says that the moon and the sun and the stars weren't created until the fourth day. But that's not true. Because how could God separate the light and the darkness if no stars, no moon, and no sun has been created? There is no light without the sun, the moon, and the stars. Therefore, the sun, the moon, and the stars were created on the first day. That is the light that God divided. So days 4, 5, and 6 are really the same as 1, 2, and 3. So it's impossible to create on day 1 and separate the day and the night, the light and the darkness. It's impossible to separate those two when the objects that create the light have not yet been created on day 4. So therefore it's, obvious and logical that the sun, the moon, and the stars were actually created when God created the heavens on day 1, which is what it actually says. So like I said, the king and queen, or the prince and princess, will always be the sun and the moon. They are the two most prominent figures in our sky. And of course, God's sun blocks out and blinds the heavens. But when the sun sets, the heavens come out, the stars come out, which is why the ancients gained wisdom by studying the movements of God's heaven and the stars. So it's the observance of the stars that the ancients realized that some of them were wandering. Thus, some of them moved as time moved on. And anything that moves must be alive. Therefore, when the ancient Elohim, or the stars, were moving, they were the ones that were further away. So they were in the concept of being older. Thus, they were the older gods. While the moon and the sun were new and vibrant and bright, they are the newborns, or they are the prince and princess of the earth. So the ancients thought that these moving planets were indeed the ancient gods. So the ancients assigned certain quadrants of the zodiac with planets, and basically assigning them their sectors in God's abode, or God's skies, the constellations of the stars. So time goes by the moon and the sun, and it goes by when the sun enters these different quadrants of the zodiac, or these different houses, which is why God's son is born in a stable or a manger, which is a house of the zodiac, in Aries, the lamb. So the annual cycle of the sun begins in Aries, and of course, as it goes through the houses, it goes down to June, which is Cancer, and then of course it goes up to Libra, which is the scales of justice, because this is when the sun enters the underworld, and when it reaches Capricorn, which is Saturn, the golden fertility of the corn god, agricultural god, God's sun is in the most high position. It is in the mid-L of the year, of the winter time. So in ancient times, this is when the Holly King and the Oak King would fight and take over the new realm of the new season. And of course, this is why old Father Time, Saturn L, is what we call Santa today. So this is the time of the year when time is inverted and hung upside down, the month of December. And I've explained this many times in my videos about Santa is Satan, is Saturn, it is the old, slayer of time. Thus the harvest is the end of time and the slayer. Thus Jesus is the sower and the reaper. So in many of my videos in the past, I've explained all about Saturn L, or Kronos, the ancient fertility, golden corn god of agriculture, the harvest lord, old Father Time, which is why we get presents during Christmas, and old, Saturn L is Santa Claus, which is Satan, because it's in December during the decline of winter, during the death of, life and earth. So all of this Christmas and Saturnalia is all the same symbolism. It's just representing the characteristics of nature. So this is why old Saturnale or Cronus is the father of time. He consumes time, which is why he eats the little children. And of course, that's why all holidays that we celebrate have to do with little kids. Easter, Valentine's, all of them. Especially Christmas time. That's why Santa has a little kid sitting on his lap. You're looking at the old and the new year. And that's why I explained that Santa has a big belly, because he is the child eater. He consumes time. And of course, this is why so many people are confused about Jesus being born during Christmas time. This is the time of the winter solstice, when time is hung upside down, because the sun is at its lowest point. The summer solstice is when it's at its highest point in the mid-L. So the solstice marks one cross, and the other cross is the equinox of Aries and Libra. So this marks the time when the sun gets the absolute oldest, before it is reborn again and becomes new. So like I said, this is the 12, this is at the most high, but yet it is inverted. It's hung upside down before it flips back to the beginning. So like I was saying, this is the time of the middle, thus the midnight or the midday. Now remember that L is also the 12th letter. So Christmas is the 12. It is when God's sun and moon are in the house of Capricorn, which is why the old goat or Santa Claus rides the goat. So by the way, this is where you get the concept of the devil and Satan and Santa and Saturn, because this is the time of the underworld when God's son goes to the underworld for 6 months. Thus the Apollyon, which means the destroyer, because the sun destroys the darkness. So these are the months of decline, are all the DE words, like death, like devil, like demon, because it's in December, the decline. Thus the deceiver, the opposer. So that's why the Bible says that, the devil takes over until the time of the season when Jesus or God takes over again. It's the same thing. They're both God. He's a deity. He owns both sides. So anyway, throughout history, the dates and times, the days of the week, the months, they've all been named and renamed over again. But all that matters is the truth, and the truth is the season, the time that the sun and the moon are in that particular time of the season, throughout the seasons. So like I've explained, the Bible is all about the bi-cycle of two, or the Bibles of the 2 seasons. So I've explained that Aries marks the time of the new year for the Bible. Thus, the portal or the doorway of Aries, the spring Aviv Passover. So a new year can be determined by anyone at any particular point in time. But the solstice and the equinoxes, the fall and the rises of them, are the cross of religion, because that is the time when things are at even or they stand still, which of course is the meaning of solstice. So when the season is in balance or standing still, it marks the time of even. Thus, we celebrate like New Year's Eve, Christmas Eve, and of course the Celtic New Year, which I'll get back to about the 8 later on, but the Celtic New Year is Halloween, All Hallows Eve, the eve of November. So anyway, it's at these times of the mid-rest or the eve, we celebrate a major event, which is where we get the word. Like the event on Sabbath, which is set apart. And in fact, this is where we get our word party. We throw a party on the parting from the old to the new. So our New Year's Eve marks the eve of January. And January is named after the god Janus, which is the two-headed god of doorways and gateways, the beginnings and the endings. And like I've explained before, Janus or Janus actually takes its name from Ionis, which takes its name from Dionysus, Dione, Zeus and Jesus, which boils down to the two meanings of the sun and the moon.